All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. This is our regularly scheduled meeting here at the Murfreesboro Police Headquarters, March 11th, 2020. If you'll bow with me, and then we'll do the Pledge to Allegiance. Father, I thank you for this day that we get to come together. Lord, I pray that you give us wisdom, that you give us insight to be able to make decisions that would be fitting to you. Lord, we say a special prayer for all of those around our world that are suffering from an outbreak with the coronavirus, that you'll give wisdom to our doctors, that you'll give wisdom to professionals to find better ways to be able to contain. Lord, we pray for our leaders in our own country, all the way from the president to mayors to council members, that they'll be able to have the wisdom to be able to work with their constituents and work with their emergency service providers. Lord, we thank you for what you're doing for us and how you continue to bless us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move into action items. We have a rezoning of approximately 14.55 acres located along west of New Salem Highway and Warrior Drive. This is the second and final reading.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. This was delayed. First reading was approved in September. It was delayed at the request of the applicant as he worked out some issues with his buyer. They're now ready to move forward with second and final reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'll move for approval. Motion second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now move into approval to issue a request for competitive seal proposals for an ambulance services for Murfreesboro Fire and Rescue Department. Chief Foltz.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Of note, I got here very early this morning, about 10:30 actually, an hour before the meeting instead of being late to the meeting like I was before. This morning I come to you asking for the permission to issue a request for competitive seal proposal for ambulance services. As you're aware, last year, approximately same month or around this time, we were talking about some issues that we were having with Rutherford County EMS, and talking of co-location of dispatch services and talking of some other issues that we were having with Rutherford County EMS. Shortly after we updated you at that meeting, as you're aware, and we've made you updated too, we have had, we've been in talks with the county about co-locating dispatch centers, and this is in an effort to decrease the amount of time that it takes to get calls dispatched. And the biggest effort there is currently, as we stand, there's nowhere in Rutherford County that you can call 911 and not be transferred to a secondary PSAP if you request an ambulance. And the secondary PSAP is public safety answering point. Approximately 55 to 60% of the calls for emergency medical services happen within the city limits of Murfreesboro. And so our goal was to get our two centers co-located together here in this building. We've got a very adept 911 center upstairs that I'm sure all of you have seen. And it's got plenty of room to add additional dispatchers and call processors into the equation. During the last 9 months, we have been moving on with that, but when you transfer callers, it takes an incredible amount of time, or it adds an incredible amount of time to that, at least a minute to a minute and a half, and sometimes longer to transfer a caller from one center to another because of the re-verification of information and et cetera. And that was our goal, was to get that time down and increase the efficiencies of getting fire trucks and EMS units dispatched to calls. In fact, in some cases, we were seeing where our calls to get dispatched were longer than our travel times to get to a scene of a call. And so if it takes us 2.5 minutes to travel in the truck to the scene of the call, it was taking longer than that for us to get dispatched to the call itself. And so we wanted to come up with some solutions on that. The mayor and Mr. Tyndall have both been involved for the last year now, almost a year, 9 to 10 months that we've been working in this co-location. Through this co-location, there's been many things accomplished. Bill Terry has been working on the IT end with the folks from the county with IT services on the radio, all the questions about computer systems, the CAD system, everything like that. We've been working together very diligently over that time frame. We were very well on track toward that happening. And in December, in November, and the copies that I gave you or that the mayor passed around were copies of an email exchange with items of the co-location that had kind of been brought into question, in particular the coordination of the building here or the coordination of police department activities. And so some language was pulled out of the interlocal agreement and placed into the email to make sure that everyone was okay with it. And you can see the people that were involved in that were mainly the people that were involved in the co-location agreement that were either involved or on this email itself or CC'd on this. And on November the 21st, Mayor Ketron signed off or gave the final sign off that all looks good to him. And that interlocal agreement was slated to go to County Commission's Public Safety Committee. In December, the Public Safety Committee of County Commission approved the interlocal agreement unanimously, and it went to County Commission in January on the regular agenda. In fact, on the consent agenda. At that January meeting, it was pulled from the consent agenda, and questions of concerns about dispatching Murfreesboro Fire Rescue, and why that they were not sure why dispatching Murfreesboro Fire Rescue with their personnel was in the agreement, and it was a surprise to them that this had occurred. And questions about that as the reasons that it was pulled off. Once that was pulled off the agenda, we kind of reached back out. We established a meeting, got together on a meeting with all the parties involved, including both mayors, Mr. Tyndall, our city and county attorney, all the players that were involved met together, and they brought up concerns about essentially why they were being asked to dispatch us. Liability concerns and et cetera. All of those discussions about dispatching Murfreesboro Fire Rescue had been in that agreement from the very start of the agreement 9 months ago, 10 months ago. And working through that, we kind of had some questions ourselves about why they were stating that it was a surprise. After we got into this discussion, after that meeting was over, I basically talked to Mr. Tyndall and I talked to the mayor both to ask them if it was okay to pull them from dispatching us and allow us to continue to be dispatched by Murfreesboro Police Department personnel as long as we could get the co-location agreement. The second document that you have in there is the email that was sent from Mayor McFarland to Mayor Ketron asking basically for their consideration that we were pulling the request that RCMS dispatch our personnel. It has my recommendation listed in the email below it, along with the reasons why we pulled that request and the benefits that would still be garnered if we were to co-locate dispatch. On that Friday, following that Wednesday that the mayor sent that email, Adam Tucker, our city attorney, sent an interlocal agreement, and that's the last email that you have in that information that you have to them, basically stating that here's a revised interlocal agreement with the county no longer dispatching Murfreesboro fire personnel and still seeking for that interlocal agreement to go forward. 2 weeks passed from the time that those emails were sent. Mayor McFarland reached out to Mayor Ketron, and Mayor Ketron still raised concerns with being able to do the co-location. And that's where we kind of came to a stalemate. And I guess I'll let Mayor McFarland discuss or talk about some of the things that Mayor Ketron said about concerns or reservations with that.
No, I want to say Mayor Ketron has been, from the time he's been in office, I think it's evident how much we've all worked together from, giving land at the corner of Fortress and Blaze to work with them. We've had a lot of really, really good dialogue, so I don't want anything to come across that being negative toward the county, the commission, or the mayor, but we've worked for really going on 5 years now on issues related to dispatch and also our fire department personnel being able to practice to their standards. And I think that goes back for several years, back to Mayor Burgess, as a matter of fact. So we worked through all those, and we've had a really good history of being able to coordinate. But after all of this took place, I called Mayor Ketron. I think there still were some concerns. I will say the tone of our last meeting was much different than any of the other meetings we had before. There was a lot of questions raised on dispatch. So finally, we felt like after sitting with Mr. Tucker, with Craig, and with Chief, that we said, well, if that's a concern, we want to take that off the table. We'll continue dispatching our fire and rescue department because there are some benefits by everyone coming together. It became clear that I think there were some other things. I'm not sure what there are that, the Public Safety Committee voted unanimously to approve the original interlocal agreement. So I don't know what changed, but it was the recommendation from staff that, we need to discuss and look at what, is best for the citizens of Murfreesboro. Also, as the citizens of Murfreesboro, we're county residents. So what's being brought to us today is not to make a decision to go into the ambulance service. It's like anything as a good council member we should do is to get information. And, I think that's where we are. Again, I've not been involved in all the meetings. As a matter of fact, Chief, and you can see in the email thread, I was not even on the initial email on the interlocal agreement where everything was agreed upon. But it just seems right now that we need to be able to get the information on if we do want to go in to the medical transport, medical dispatch, whether we want to go into medical dispatch, and then as a council we can see where we are on those things, how much it's going to cost, how much the cost recovery is, if the best option is going to be a private-public partnership with someone like St. Thomas or Vanderbilt, like other municipalities have been or have done, and see what that does. At the same time, being responsible not only to our residents in Murfreesboro, but to the county, because anything we do that indirectly hurts the county, it hurts us as city residents as well. But at the same time, I think it shows that when the county gave the recommendation that they didn't feel comfortable dispatching our fire and rescue department, when we said, okay, that's fine. If that's an issue, we take that off the table, and then we still couldn't get anything completed, I'm not sure we could do anything more than we're doing right now. We've offered the dispatch for free. I don't know what the total amount is that the county's going to save in radios, but it's millions of dollars that they're not going to have to pay. So I don't, from a city standpoint, I don't know what else we could do. We've done everything. So I think the next responsible thing for us to do is to at least investigate this to see what it entails.
Yes,
Did I miss anything, Craig?
No, I think I covered it.
And in addition to the dispatch, as I mentioned, there are other issues, and the mayor alluded to those as far as the standard of care we're delivering in our community, the standard of care that we are able to deliver as a fire department. We've been wrestling with a lot of those issues, and to be frank and honest with you, working with EMS has been very difficult to get even minor things done. Mr. Tucker was reviewing a document earlier that he had started in 2013, but 2 years before I even became the chief here, trying to address issues that we were having with emergency medical services. And so we just want to gather information on what's available out there. And as the mayor mentioned, we have some opportunities for public-private partnerships where we think we could provide very high-level emergency medical services at very little to no cost to the citizens through a public-private partnership that would grant the rights to non-emergency medical services in the city limits to that private partner.
And the last thing I want to say, and I think y'all have heard me say this, so I want to be clear. The residents of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, in my opinion, do not care when they call 911 what the color of the truck is or whose initials are on the side of the truck. They just want the emergency service that when they call 911. And I think that's from the very get-go of the co-location agreement, the only thing that we want to be able to do. It's not about control. It's not about trying to take over and do an ambulance service. It's about if a call is 2 minutes from our fire department and we can get there quicker, then we want to do that. And the same thing, if a call comes into RCMS and they can get there quicker than we can get there, we want that to happen. And so that, I think the overall goal that we all want is the absolute best patient care that we can as a community. And that means not just Murfreesboro, that means Rutherford County as well.
Yes.
Do we have data on response times from our local response time in comparison to what the county's doing response time?
Yes. Yeah, I can get that to you. We can gather up all that. I don't have the county's data as far as their response times initially, but I can get you our response time data.
Can we get the county's data?
I will see if I can get that for you. Yes.
That'd be helpful.
Didn't we request that some time back?
I don't think we ever went through with the request because at the time we were getting ready to request it, some changes were made and we started moving toward co-location. So I don't think we ever actually submitted a public records request for that, which was what we were going to do at the time.
I think that's important data, and I'm for getting as much information as we can. I would encourage. I know it's hard, especially if you've been working as hard as you've worked to kind of get stonewalled at this juncture. But I do think it's important for staff to continue to work with the county to see if we can get through what we're doing, but not in absence of us continuing to try to do what we're trying to do.
I think so as well.
You know, you made a good point, Mayor, that it doesn't matter who responds as long as someone gets there. So I'm a little confused. Is it an ego problem or what? I'm just trying to understand.
Ms. Gales Harris, I thought going all the way through the holidays that we were fine on everything that we had talked about. So the honest answer, and I had a great conversation with Mayor Ketron yesterday, just to let him know, that we were going to discuss as a council going this route just to get information. I reiterated to him that it's not our intent as a city to do anything that would hurt the county, but at the same time that we needed to be responsible to our residents to make sure that we had all the information we had. So, I think Mayor Ketron is absolutely on board to make sure that whatever level of care can be the best inside Rutherford County. I think everyone shares that, but I don't know what changed from the time that this was approved at the Public Safety Commission and went to the planning, or went to the county commission. I honestly don't know what's changed. So we've had discussions and we've not really been able to get to the bottom of the thing. I will say the last thing that was the issue was the dispatch and the liability of RCMS dispatch in our fire department, and we took that off the table. So from there, I'm not sure.
I was just wondering because I know in life the most precious thing is saving a life. So it's something that important. I just
And Chief gave me the information the other day that for every 1 minute on a cardiac patient that you're not there, the likelihood of that person dying was it 10%
10% for every minute.
So 10% for every minute. And, that's what it boils down to. That, I use this example. If my kid goes into anaphylactic shock, I don't care who gives them the EpiPen. It does not matter to me who
Right.
it is. I just want them to get
Right.
that EpiPen. And so, is there a turf issue? Probably. No one likes change, but I thought we had gotten through all that. So,
And I completely agree. What we're looking for is getting appropriate trained responders, providing the highest level of care we can there in the shortest amount of time. And
I
that's
still think,
the
Madeline,
entire goal.
just to be honest, I still think there are some inside, not just, I'm not saying at Rutherford County, there's some inside the emergency service profession who still don't like that firefighters, men and women, can provide that service, because but that's being done nationally. It's
Yes.
not a new thing. Do we have a motion? Do you need a motion from us?
Yes, motion to approve.
Let me make one more comment. But I don't have a problem with us pursuing information so that we can make a good decision going down. It's kind of going down the road. But I would really encourage both parties, the city and the county, to continue the dialogue so that we can identify what are the issues. Because I think we all saw a great opportunity months ago when this was first presented to us, that there was a great opportunity for collaboration, saving dollars at both levels at some point, but providing even better care. So I just want to encourage the conversation, the dialogue, to not be terminated because we're looking at this other alternative as a possibility, that we don't cut off the line of communication, because there still may be an opportunity for us to do what is in the best interest of the citizens if we keep on talking through some of these points that have been identified as critical points. So I just encourage everybody to
Yes,
keep
sir.
talking.
to follow up on what Bill has said, I think it's important that we understand that when there's a call that goes out in Murfreesboro, as a general rule, at least in my neighborhood, and where my observation is the fire department gets there before the ambulance does. And they do a great job of being the first responders. And so I don't think there's any question that Murfreesboro has been proactive in trying to be as service friendly as we possibly can with our public and make sure that the services that we provide are second to none. I think this is a continuation of trying to make sure that we continue to provide the highest quality service that we possibly can for the citizens of Murfreesboro. I also spent about an hour before this meeting talking with Pettis Reed, who's the commissioner or the director of the board for the county. And in that conversation with him, it does seem that personalities has gone way beyond what the true issues are. Because when I talked to him and said, what are your true concerns and what are we trying to accomplish to make sure that we provide the best service we possibly can, we got down to personalities of so-and-so said such and such and so-and-so said such and such. And I know that they've gone through two directors. I guess they fired the second one Monday, and so there's no question they're facing challenges within internal, and I think that, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to continue to cooperate and make sure that we go down every avenue that we can to ultimately provide the best service that we can. The challenge with this for me is the fact that I don't want us to have a duplication of services, and I don't want us to provide something in the city that the county is already providing adequately. In my 8 years almost on this council, I've never had anybody call me and say, Eddie, I've got a problem with the ambulance service. And to me, that tells me that the ambulance service that we have provided in the past has met expectations. And maybe they'll start calling me now if they don't. But my concern is right now is the fact that we're having to vote on something even that we really don't have a whole lot of information on. I mean, we're kind of new to this conversation. I think the newspaper sent me a notice yesterday. They wanted to do an interview with me about this topic, and I didn't return the call, which is unusual for me because I had no information to give the guy. I knew nothing about it other than what we had in our agenda. And so somewhere in there, I think we need to do a better job of the council, and I'm talking about myself, of understanding what's going on with public safety and what role we play, because ultimately we're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not the city gets in this business. If we get in this business, we account for 55% of their calls, but we're 75% of their revenue. And if you pull 75% of the revenue out from under a service that's currently being provided, I don't care what it is, they're going to struggle and they're going to see significant increases, which means higher property tax on the Rutherford County side for us, even if the city can provide it at no additional expense. So ultimately what we're looking at is what is the impact on the taxpayers to provide a service that personally I'm not getting any complaints about already. And so I'm challenged to even vote on this because we're trying to do what is best for the citizens. There's no question about that, and I think everybody sitting up here's heart's in the right place. But at the same time, I understand that we've got a service that has, to this point, been at least adequate. And so I just hope that we can get back to the table and get the train back on the rails, and that the county doesn't have to go out and buy a $30 million dispatching center when we've got one sitting here that we're saying, come and use it. I mean, when we're offering the things that we're offering, then it sounds like a control issue of saying, well, who's going to supervise those people and who's going to be in control of it? And it shouldn't be a control issue because, again, as Shane and Madeline both pointed out, we don't care whose name's on the side of the vehicle, and I don't care who signs the paycheck. But we do need to continue to provide an efficient and economical service that meets expectations. So I'm just hoping that we can get back to the table with the county and continue to have conversation that will iron out this situation and come to a really good point that we can say we come to the right conclusion here. And I think at some point we felt comfortable that it was going that direction, and for some reason everything went off the track all at once. And now I think the question is, do we abandon the train or do we try to get it back on the track? And to me, I'm the one who's leaning more towards saying let's fix the problem and get the train back on the track rather than abandoning it, because there's going to be an additional expense on the county side for every citizen who lives in Murfreesboro, and as a citizen of Rutherford County, there's going to be an additional expense if their service cost increases. So that's where I'm at on it, and I hope that we can continue to try and resolve the issue and come to an ultimate better service than what we're currently providing, but certainly efficiency is a factor.
And I think it was never our intention to abandon the conversation or to not be available to have further conversations. We're certainly available to do that. However, I think we're at a point now to make those conversations as fruitful as possible and to gather the information we would need as quickly as possible. That's really what this does. This doesn't commit the city to doing anything other than to gather information in a very kind of organized fashion from different groups. That's what the competitive seal proposals will do, and I think that, if anything, it will help get the conversations back on track if that's possible at all.
Can you give us a little bit of, or one of you two guys? I mean, we got the history, and we've talked a little bit about back and forth about what we kind of know and what we don't know. What is the proposal for? I mean, the proposal for ambulance service, I mean, what does that even mean?
Well, the proposal is, it's pretty much, we're putting it out there as information gathering, so it's wide open. It is, what can you provide for the city as far as ambulance service and what we're wanting to do, provide for the citizens. And what that means is this.
That would respond to that would be big healthcare groups?
Well, it could be anybody from Regional Ambulance, which is based and owned here in Murfreesboro, to American Medical Response, which is a global conglomerate, to St. Thomas, to Vanderbilt.
They're going to come back and just tell us, hey, if you guys ended up getting in this business, this is what some options might look like as far as what it would cost and how the revenue flow would be, et cetera,
yes.
et cetera.
And
that's what this proposal will come back looking like?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I'm open to getting all that stuff together. You know, there's one issue that I'm having a little bit of trouble getting past as it relates to the whole dispatch thing, which is, will this proposal, I mean, with the whole way that the PSAP works, does this proposal change anything as it relates to the dispatch issue that we got? I mean, it does, I don't.
Well,
right?
The emergency medical dispatch would be performed at our center by Murfreesboro Emergency Communications personnel, and we would no longer have to send the call or the caller to Rutherford County EMS if we have.
Comes here, but would
Yes.
we become the PSAP at that point?
Well, we are the primary PSAP for the city of Murfreesboro. Every time you call for an ambulance, currently,
So how does it get to the county? Where's
we
the delay in moving around?
transfer the caller to the county. Any time that you call for an ambulance in Rutherford County anywhere, that call is transferred to a secondary PSAP, which means our dispatchers get the initial information, they verify your location, they get your initial information, and then they transfer you to Rutherford County EMS. That's what the agreement is, that we transfer all callers. They do emergency medical dispatch, which is in addition to determining the call type and prioritizing the call. They get pre-arrival instructions. All of that stuff is going in. That's what they do. And then
Goes to the county first, though. If
yes,
it's off the wrong.
Yeah, if the cell tower picks it up the wrong direction, it goes to the county. County sends it to Rutherford County EMS, and then we never even know a call's happening inside the city. And then Rutherford County has to send that call to us, which creates an additional delay. And that's what we've been trying to get worked out for the past 10 months by doing that co-location of these calls do not need to go anywhere. Calls need to be processed. It's my preference, and I'm a firm believer that you ought to literally, if you call 911, you ought to be on the phone with the same call processor. The person talking to you ought to be the same person all the way through the call. In fact, there's a bill in the legislature this year that's called the Direct Dispatch Bill that was introduced by a representative from Wilson County that does exactly that. It requires PSAPs to stay on the line with the caller all the way through the call to make sure that those don't get dropped, because apparently in Wilson County, a caller got dropped and a person wound up losing their life by them not being able to find the location of the caller. And that's what we're trying to prevent. That's what all of this is about, is making sure that we pull that in together and make sure that we can work through this.
Well, y'all know how I am about stuff. I'm definitely open to looking at options, and so I'm gonna definitely make a motion to support this particular piece of this. I will kind of get it on the table too, that it's, you know, dang disappointing if we can't, I mean, if we can't work this out with the county somehow without having to go through more of a process than we are. I mean, here's what I'll tell you, my thought process on this, just so I'm gonna give y'all all fair warning. I say we get this in front of us. Y'all keep going. The staff, Craig and Mark, y'all that have been working on this, please keep working on it. And I don't want to have to do this, but I guess, you know, if we get to a point where if it doesn't get worked out, I mean, I feel like I got to get in here and figure every day. I'm gonna have to learn what PSAP means, and you know which PSAP goes to other PSAP and all that crap. And I really don't want to have to do that. But if we have to do that to figure out what we got to do, and if we got to raise taxes to have an ambulance service in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, because somehow we can't work with the county to save people's lives, that's going to be pretty damn disappointing. Mm-hmm. So, keep trying, please, and I'm gonna make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to, thank you, Chief. We'll move on to Economic Development Planning Update.
Jim Colson's with us. Jim, you met a while back a couple different times as our economic development consultant, helping us to develop our economic development capacity within the city. And wanted to give you an update as we go through that process. I want to also piggyback on that. One of the most important things, and Jim will touch on this as well, one of the most important things in economic development right now, and that's workforce and availability of workforce. And I had the opportunity to sit through a presentation on an economic development opportunity that Beth Duffield from the Chamber presented on what the Chamber is doing on the workforce development, and I thought that would be a great opportunity for her to come so the Council can understand what the Chamber is doing in that aspect. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim, and he can give an update, answer any questions that you have, and then Beth will go through her the Chamber's development program.
Great, thank you, Craig. Appreciate the opportunity to be back here. The objective today is to do about a 50,000 foot elevation flyover of the economic development planning process, just to provide you with an indication as to what we're looking at, some of the preliminary findings that we're addressing and that we're building the plan around, to make sure that we're not moving in a direction inconsistent with what your expectations are. I think the key thing to look at initially is, where do we want to be? What is it that we want to achieve? What are the expectations that we as a community have going forward? And I think that every time I get into a strategic planning discussion, I always spend the first couple of days reminding myself what's a vision, what's a mission, what's a goal, what's an objective. And they mean a lot of different things to different people. So I want to make this point really simple. No matter where we start, and what we're going to start with is a vision, we need to make sure that that vision has a very specific action plan. And by that, talking about something that can be defined, can be measured, can be assessed, and can be fine-tuned as we're going forward on this. The second aspect of it is the implementation of the plan. We need to make sure that before we start this thing, we have an idea as to how it's going to roll out. Who's going to be responsible for specific activities? What are those activities going to cost? What are the time frames? And how do we establish standards of accountability and reporting so that we can make sure that what's happening is happening consistent with what the expectations are? There was a lot of discussion the last time that I was here about branding. I was asked the question, do I think branding is important? And I think my response at that point was, you got to make sure that it's more than a logo. And I've spent a lot of time looking specifically at Murfreesboro, at the region, and what's happening from a trend within the branding world. I think that that exercise will prove to be extremely valuable to this community. Number one is that the branding process will help you drive what your internal thoughts are, what your belief is, what your commitment is to. And then I think by applying that, it starts to define what your external communication is. And we're not going to get into a lot of that today, but I know that it is an issue within this body, and it will be something that will be brought back in the very near future. And the last thing that I'll talk about is the transition. This is where we stand today. This community has a good partner with the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. I think as we talk about what does the transition mean for this community, what does it mean for the chamber, I think we will, through this process, clarify what the internal expectations are and what the regional expectations are, establishing rules of engagement and specific responsibilities going forward. Councilmember Wade, I'm just glad there wasn't a video here when I started. From an economic development update perspective, just talking about the vision is really a statement of what I see my future self being. And as I've looked at this area and heard many people discuss as to what they expected, what they desired for the future, I kind of built it around three major concepts. Now, this isn't the vision. This is the concepts that we're driving towards that vision. Number one is prosperity. How do we as a community generate additional capital investment? How do we increase per capita income for our residents? And how do we achieve a greater improved quality of life? Diversity. How do you support the existing core of businesses that exist here and help them become more competitive and help them expand and achieve their goals? In addition to that, how do you attract new and different types of companies to create a higher level of diversity and more opportunities for people that live in this community and who are going to live in this community? You know, and one of those issues too is what can we attract here that will help people stopping from getting in a car and driving to the Northwest 30 minutes, you know, every morning, or actually it's significantly more than 30 minutes if you're driving, you know, north and west. And then the last part is how do we as a community drive, encourage innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, technology transfer, all those things. And I think the last thing is how do you structure this in such a way that you're building a sustainable program? I think one of the frustrations and one of the challenges that many people have in economic development is sometimes you'll find a community makes a significant investment into a company, into a project, and when the incentives run out, the company is no longer as actively involved in the community or doesn't deliver on what they're talking about. What you want to do is make sure that you get the return on investment that you're expecting, but you're also building an economy that's going to continue to grow and expand even apart from the efforts that you're putting forward. So some of the critical findings, this is all old information for you, but I want to say it, and I want to tell you why I think it's important. Number one is population. When you tell the story about Murfreesboro, it's a story about growth, and the growth is amazing. So since 1990, this community has grown 181%. That is a huge number. And if you do the simple math, you look at that annual growth rate, and it's pretty impressive. But when you break it down into some smaller chunks and you look at decades, between 1990 and 2000, the growth was about 5.3%. Between 2000 and 2010, the growth rate was just under 6 at about a little bit over 5.9%. If you look at what happened between 2010, and 2017 is the last number that I had in my study. You've cut that in half, the growth rate. The raw net number is bigger because the population is bigger. So there are some questions that you have to ask yourself, or I have to ask myself, and then analyze it in talking to you all is, and I will get that y'all down good by the time this thing's over, but is that happening because the market's running out of steam? Is it happening because the advantages that existed within this community as compared to the rest of the region are changing, or is it just the cyclical nature of a maturing market? And I think that's something that we need to take a look at when you get into the number of building permits. They are less in this community than they've historically been. So before we plan with old information, we need to make sure we really feel confident in what we believe the future trends are going to be. The second thing is per capita income growth continues to improve. In fact, that is the most impressive story that I think Murfreesboro can tell about itself today. Historically, Murfreesboro has lagged behind the state and the U.S. average, and the region from a per capita income number. In 2017, Murfreesboro passed the U.S. national average, and that's a significant achievement. This community still lags behind Nashville and the region as a whole, but it is closing the gap, and it's getting closer. But that's where the number one measurement about diversity and the increased quality of life and the attracting higher quality jobs that pay more, that's where that's going to be measured. So it's a good story, but it's a story that can be managed to a better outcome. In terms of the regional trends, you can't help but be part of your region. That's where you're at. We should be very excited about all the positive things that are happening in the Nashville region. I think what we want to do is figure out how do we take advantage of that? How do we become partners with those guys, but at the same time define that opportunity to achieve greater economic development benefit for ourselves? And I think that's what this effort is all about, is to tell our own story and to implement our own outreach programs in such a way that it achieves the specific benefits that we want. And we'll talk a whole lot more about what that means. But this is if you're going to pick a region to be in, this is a pretty good one. A lot of things are happening. I think the second biggest story that Murfreesboro has to wrap itself around and really understand, and it goes back to the visioning thing, is how do we differentiate ourselves? And it steps a little bit into tell your own story type of things, but really, how are we different? I will tell you, the initial perception from many people is you're just big. You're bigger, you're growing fast, but is there the necessary quality of life, charm, all of those things there? I think that it is. It is here. But we need to figure out how do we tell that story in such a way that people understand that we're just not a big community that's growing and is out of control. And I think that is where the branding and the community commitment exists. As you look at the region, there are some key industries. Once again, you all live here. I'm not telling you something that you don't know. And all of this is to sort of set up for the next page. But the key regional industries are finance, insurance, real estate, the fire industries, not the fire industry we just talked about, healthcare, publishing, both from a print perspective and from a music perspective, supply chain management. And that's not necessarily, you shouldn't read just distribution there. Supply chain management really gets into the technology associated with moving goods around and dealing with inventories and warehousing and everything else. That is one of the industries that's undergoing more change than any other industries right now, especially in the food business. The expectations of the consumer in terms of knowing where their food came from, how fast it got there, freshness, quality control, all of those things. That industry is highly technical and isn't always specifically related to trucks being on the road. Biotechnology, manufacturing, both automotive and others, a lot of plastics activity in the region, technology, innovation, entertainment, that is a huge industry here, and then lastly, tourism and conventions. So as we have had conversations and looking at the data and the specific advantages that exist within this market, the industries that jump out as needing further testing and potential target industries, number one is, I think everybody wants to see Class A headquarters on that list. I think there is the possibility of Class A headquartery types of projects, but it's not the natural step today. I think more people would probably go to Nashville or go to other communities within the region. Not to say that they wouldn't come here, but it's not the natural fit. We'd have to have some stars align for that to happen. But if you start looking at the shared service operations, that could be the administrative side, HR, accounting, IT, procurement, insurance, within larger corporations, either captive, working for one organization, like a large firm that wants to find a better location, a more cost beneficial location than in a downtown very expensive city. They may want to find a home for those people, and I've been involved in several of those projects, and they're quite good. The others are people that come in and provide those services to multiple companies. That's also a very good model. I think one of the also shared service operations that hasn't really become part of a site location discussion yet, but will, is taking the engineering and the design services and bringing those into new locations and specializing in those fields and providing offices for that. Healthcare, both from a provision of healthcare, but also the innovation, the design, the support, the manufacturing of health care opportunities. I think that is a market that this community should look at. I'm going to say call centers, and that's when everybody starts throwing things at me. I'm not talking about the outbound $10, $12 an hour type of jobs. I'm talking it would almost fall into that shared service operation category where you have the $70,000, $80,000 a year high tech people who are dealing with specific issues. It's probably not the third one on my list, but it's in terms of importance. But I think it is an industry that should not be discounted. Of all the industries that have gotten really great incentive deals and have left as soon as the incentives ran out, or they lost a contract, they lost a single contract, the call center industry is the most guilty of all of those, and they deserve, in many regards, the poor reputation they have. But not all call center type of operations are equal. These would be very high-end type, and the people that work there have substantial skill sets and earn money. The next one.
Could I jump in before we?
Yeah, please.
Go? The chamber did some work on a workforce study. Most recently, they came and did a presentation. They did talk a little bit about what call centers are and what they are now versus what immediately comes to mind with a lot of people when we talk about call centers. One of the interesting points they raised was that larger companies are putting in call centers, and they're embedding in the call centers business system analysts and pretty high level people. And the purpose of one of the purposes of doing it, because they're there to do a job, but they're also there to kind of scout out, is this a location for a regional center? What's the community, what's the workforce like? Gathering all those factors, and a lot of those have been developed then into something much larger than just a call center, but more of a regional type of operation. So I wouldn't want to discount them. There are sophisticated ones. I know we've did a call set, the California AAA. So the AAA services for California are done out of Glendale, Arizona, because there's a call center that was put in there. Those are pretty well-paying jobs. It was an incentive project that went in there. Had nothing to do with California. All their members are in California, but the call center was located there because of the costs, and it brought in a lot of good jobs and revitalized an entire plant that had been closed down, or not a plant, an engineering operation. So just thought I'd add that. Go ahead, Jim.
Craig has already interrupted your train of thought. I'll follow up on it. You made the comment a few minutes ago that Murfreesboro may not be the location that they would pick in our area for a corporate headquarters, and there were reasons for that. What are the reasons why you would not pick Murfreesboro as a corporate headquarters destination?
I want to be really careful that what I said was what I meant to say.
Okay.
There's no reason that they wouldn't or that they couldn't. It's not the natural train of thinking now. Normally people say, well, I want to be in Nashville. Well, if I can't be in Nashville, then maybe I need to be in Franklin, or I need to be here or that. I think the key is to elbow your way to the table and say, yeah, but what about us? Because right now they're not getting to that point of considering us as a viable real estate option for that. So if a Class A headquarters project had in their mind that they wanted to be 30 minutes away from the major city and they came here, I think they would be very positively influenced that from a labor perspective, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of their labor, whether they locate here or they located in downtown Nashville, are going to be the same people. And the primary beneficiary of that relocation is that employee who no longer has to, make the hour slog on something that should take, 25 minutes to drive. So there was nothing intended in my comment to say that you couldn't handle it. It's just there is a significant amount of groupthink when it comes to decision making like that.
How do you elbow your way to the front of the table to get that consideration? Because currently, I think we've struggled with that.
Yeah, I think you have, but by doing it, by making sure that you have a presence, by looking for opportunities, by being in the offices of the appropriate people. They don't always let you in the office. Sometimes you have to find that balance of persistence and pest. I sometimes confuse those two, but yeah.
And I think that's the reason we have you here, to be honest, because we want you to be that one of those people who are pushing us towards that table. But what service, what area, what department, what group is the main person that you would say should be pushing us towards that table? Is there, because you can say preparation. I mean, we build corporate headquarters with turnkey operations, and people are still slow to come. Where are we failing? Where are we not getting that door knocked? Where are we not getting them to understand our availability? How do you go about doing that?
I'm going to punt on that for right now, only because I think that my answer at this moment could set a tone and could have more influence than I probably would want it to throughout the rest of this process. But the simple answer to that is the person is us. Now, we may do that in partnership with Beth's organization. We may do that in partnership with the TVA. We may do that in partner with the State Economic Development Group. We may do that through in partnership with a whole lot of other people. Preferably our best partners and our best engaged people are the people who are currently doing that here now. And those are the relationships that we need to continue to build. We need to be sitting with the real estate people within the corporations and the companies, the types of industries that we desire. And that's part of this process, is coming up with those lists of people and those lists of names and how to reach out to them and setting up a program to do that. We're not there yet. At the same time, it's going and sitting with the major real estate folks that specialize either in a geographic region or in a particular industry. Some of the top call center operation people who influence almost every major office project in the country right now comes out of CB Richard Eller, or CBRE. I'm old. CBRE in Phoenix, Arizona. One guy, Jim Trobaugh. Jim Trobaugh, and you would have never guessed this 20 years ago when he started focusing on this, but he's built a whole industry around himself and influencing that. So we get people flying in. Phoenix gets people flying in all the time to meet with that guy to talk about these projects. So we need to figure out who who those people are. There are Facebook, Google, Microsoft. Those guys are active in the marketplace right now, and they're kind of like Lowe's and Home Depot. If one goes somewhere, the other ones are there. I have, over the last year and a half, 2 years, tried to get in front of those guys. I'm realistically 15 times, and I am not shy, and I haven't made any progress. And the message that always comes back from somebody close to them is, if we need you, we'll call you. We do this on our own. We know how to do this. Well, they don't, but there's a lot of activity out there. You got to get in front of the right person. And I shouldn't admit this, but a lot of times it's just, luck that's created by being persistent, by being near the scene of the crime.
They keep knocking.
Okay. I'll hurry through. I think some of these other industries are advanced manufacturing operations. I think that is a high. It's a mixed bag, but it has a lot of high skill and high paid jobs. Technology innovation, when I talk about that, I'm really talking about how do you build an environment where you can support technology transfer, incubators, innovation centers. There's a lot of places, and I know you'll probably talk about this. There's a lot of places in that spectrum, from we train a few people to we have an ongoing, activity that's putting 100 people through. Entertainment, esports. This is a category that can be a lot of different things. It could fall into more of the quality of life, but it also is a major revenue producer. And then something that I haven't seen generated anywhere, and I think this is a market that probably could support it, but I'm not 100% there yet, is a pharmaceutical type of company in this area. Once again, they're all different, and we'd have to define that. So some of the key factor advantages is there is strong state and regional cooperation that exists in this community. I don't know that everybody tells our story the right way, and so we need to make sure that not only do we tell our story, but other people tell it also. There's a low level of political risk. There's a lot of political maturity, and I'm talking about the community. I'm talking about you guys. There's a high level of maturity that exists within this community. One of the number one tasks that a site locator is addressing as they do that site location process is risk mitigation. How do I identify those areas that could cause me some concern, cause my company some concerns going forward? I think that you guys would be viewed as a very stable group. The region would be viewed as very stable, and risks would be able to be mitigated. There are risks always. You got to be able to mitigate them. I think the infrastructure supports the growth potential, the operating cost benefits. I think we need to continue to dive deeper into this and quantify this, but I think there are specific operating cost benefits that exist today we need to sort of trend that out and see what that looks like. There are significant real estate advantages, which we're talking about, and I'm going to blow past labor cost, availability, and training because I have an expert sitting right next to me. So we spent a lot of time looking at sites in this area, and I'm going to tell you things that you already know, but when we talk about telling our story, it's got to be differentiated. What I always try to move myself towards is finding the easy button. If I can explain to you how what I have is in your best interest and can help you become a hero within your company, that makes you more interested in listening to what I have to say. We have 5 sites that we've identified. They're all different, but they're all extremely valuable. The most valuable piece of property that you have from who you want to be in the future is the Veterans and 840 location. It is owned by you, so it gives you a lot of control. It's surrounded by other people who are interested in development and want to see things happen. It has uber opportunities for jobs, quality of life, everything. It can become that office headquarters that's located in a park that has other things and that people just like to be there. We looked at the infrastructure last week, and bringing it up to speed, become development ready, is as simple as anything comes, as long as somebody's willing to write the check. So this is your signature property within this community. The second one is not as immediately ready. There will be more challenges from a water, flood, infrastructure, roadway perspective, but it's there. It just needs to happen, is the Cherry Lane interchange. That is a great site and will offer a phenomenal gateway to the community and will be a great location for a mega site going forward. It could be anything that you guys want it to be going forward. The Joe B. Jackson location, it has it's an established industrial center. There's some great companies that are there. It could use some transportation, ingress, egress fixes, but I think those are on the way. It has the heaviest industrial, the greatest logistics, supply chain benefits, but it also is a comfortable location for somebody if they were going to make a huge investment in technology and in a factory, in a manufacturing facility, they would feel very comfortable there. Medical center at Gateway, I think this is also another primo site. You have both the city-owned parcel, you have a developer across the street, you have some former landfill sites that could come into play. This could be, once again, anything that you want it to be, and I think that next opportunity may decide what you want it to be. If somebody was coming in and wanted to build some sort of, office-y type of project, or somebody wanted to come in and do something that was more quality of life oriented, I think that this location would support it. And then the last one is just to the south of us here, the Hoover site. I think it has a combination of redevelopment and greenfield. It has rail access. It's not controlled by the community. It has private ownership, probably multiple private owners that are involved in this area. But I think it's unique enough and it's important enough to this community that I would make it a strategic objective to build the necessary relationships, to get involved in the planning, market that, and I think that you'll have a very positive project there also. This, I know you won't know where all of those are, but that's kind of how they spread out throughout the city. This wasn't done by design to sort of spread it out everywhere. It's just how the sites lay out within the community. This is not to say these are the only sites, but as I look at building or recommending the building of an economic development strategic plan, this is where I would put my efforts right now. Now, here's the cool thing about planning. The next thing that comes along is usually right next to what you just planned. And you have to have flexibility to be able to respond to opportunities as they...
Can I ask you about another piece of property? You've got some private, you've got some that we own.
Yes.
You know, the fountains obviously is already kind of there with some plans to do in the future. Like, what about the property that's right out in front of the chamber right now? You know, it's right there coming in. Are you familiar with that property? The big farm, it's got the barn that everybody, they have the events in and stuff like that. You know,
Yeah, I am, but I haven't done any real research on it. So, but yes, I'm familiar with the property, and I know that there's other properties in this community that might make this list.
There's only a few pieces of green that big within the city limits of Murfreesboro. You know, I mean, and you named a couple of them here, at least, or close to the city of Murfreesboro. That one's the only one that's really right in the heart. You know, out of all these, that's that much that you could do something with. I'm just kind of curious. I mean, generally speaking, without having to go through is that a good place for stuff like this?
I don't feel comfortable answering because I haven't done the analysis on it yet. But
I guess I would say, why not? If you're trying to find good places to do this, why haven't you looked at that as a possible place?
Well,
I'm just kind of.
I'll answer that. You know, the fact of the matter is, it's only recently become something that we've considered doing. It's just been off the table for quite a while. But over the last month, 6 weeks, it's come up, and we haven't put it on Jim's plate.
Sale or not? Or,
Huh?
I mean, part of this would only come up if it's if we think
It should be
marketable.
right. It should be available. That people have to be willing to work with us.
All right.
Well, Rick, another
Fair
good piece of property that we discussed, but
College
you know,
Street.
it's not on there, is the MTSU farm on Manson Pike in Florence. You know, that area out there, to be able to have with their new data science program, to be able to partner on some kind of tech center. But that's not on there because
Right.
it would be tough to go through that process right now. If somebody said, I want that right now, it would be tough to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that I've heard in this discussion in the past is that, you know, we need to be prepared for what if, you know, and I've used that property there at the chamber in some of my other discussions, and just from an example's sake. And when we talk about where we're going to build roads and how we're going to build roads through that specific piece of property and things like that, you know, is trying not to cut off our nose in spite of our face. And, you know, if we have some sort of way to say, well, look, if they ever do come to the table, I mean, I can think of another piece of property that's also a big piece of grass, but it's on the border of the city limits too, out towards 840. I'll just say that. That, you know, I just kind of think if there's anything that we can do to just be prepared for those types of pieces of property, to say, you know, the zoning either gets expedited, or, you know, by locating those as good places for this kind of stuff on the front end, even if they're not willing to sell it today, what can we do to be prepared to expedite any processes that need to happen? I mean, this is if dang Microsoft, you know, if H2Q for Amazon decides they want to come in and locate a big office building right in front of the Chamber of Commerce, you know, and we just said, well, we didn't think that was a possibility, so we just hadn't really done anything.
Well, I don't think that would be the case. I mean, this is obviously, when you do a plan, you got to start somewhere. And this is kind of the ones we identified immediately.
That.
Right. And so this is a dynamic plan, and nothing would be off the table. But once we get these properties addressed and the parameters and what we look for, then it's pretty quick and easy to layer other property in that become either available or we know that are you know, the owner has an interest in it and things like that. So I agree. I think Jim would agree with what you're saying. We can all sit around and identify a lot of properties, and part of the purpose of having the plan is that once we identify those properties, we can immediately address whatever need comes in because we know of them out there. So I don't want to take this as this is the only ones we're looking at. But these are the ones immediately that we're going to base the property on, or our plan on, rather, and then layer other things in as we go.
Look, fair enough. I'm just kind of introducing this as from a why not standpoint.
Yeah.
I'd rather be prepared on. I mean, to me, there's not a real long list of these pieces of property. Frankly, I mean, it's a very short list.
Yeah, right.
And so, I just want to be prepared on all of them, and whether or not that takes some policy, you know, some sort of policy scenario on our part, or do we go ahead and overlay some zoning overlays on areas or whatever? We need to, I would say we expand it from here is my suggestion.
Yep.
Good idea.
Yep, I agree.
So I'm not going to talk about this because Beth's here. The number one issue that impacts every site location decision anywhere right now is the ability to find qualified people. I think one of the most frustrating situations is that we have a lot of unqualified people that exist within our communities. And I'm not talking about Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Texas. I'm talking about everywhere. There is a severe skills gap that exists and is growing more and more each day. And I think that is the challenge of the communities, is to truly understand not just what their current labor force looks like, but what their future labor force needs to look like. Because those people who aren't part of the future labor force are part of another one of your statistics. And that's generally handled by your police department and your courts. Not everybody, but the economic disparity that exists because the jobs that are being created and hired for today have a specific minimal standard of skills that too large of our population doesn't fit. I would be surprised if you didn't talk about that going forward. I think we do have potential partners. Those partners are MTSU, TCAT, Motlow, the Chamber, the TVA, a lot of other things, and we all need to be having this conversation together. And I am going to stop talking now and turn it over to Beth, unless you have any questions. Do you have okay, would you like me to move? Oh, that's very disappointing.
So as Beth's setting up, I'll add something. We went up and looked to the Nashville area. Does everybody get one? We got enough to go down? Nashville area economic outlook for last year, which was good. One of the programs they had some site location folks up there from JLL, big international real estate firm, and they asked him a few questions. And one of the questions they asked him was, what are companies looking for? And he summed it up, I thought, pretty well. And he said two main things are talent and transit. Those are the two things. When they come in, first two questions are talent. Can we get talent? Can we get transit? Because he said, he can go and put companies in a lot of places and save them $5 a square foot, but it does them absolutely no good if they can't get the workers they need to go in there, or they can't get them there. So with those two thoughts in mind, we are addressing through the chamber, I think, the talent as best we can. And so, Beth, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I think this perfectly dovetail into the economic development conversation. I will tell you that most of the work that we have done is focused on serving our industry that we have today, but also looking forward to how do we transition those opportunities into what could come in the future. So one of the conversations we've been having with some of our industry partners is how do we get to the skills gap issue, that talent, and making sure that they have all the skills that they need for the IT jobs that are available today. But our IT council chair, who works with Schneider Electric, said education can never keep up with industry. It just is not designed to do that. So what we need to do is help teach our students this, have them understand the skill sets necessary to be able to adapt, to be flexible, to be able to learn, to problem solve, so that as they graduate, get a job, and technology is ever changing, they have this innate skill sets to be able to help them to be successful. And that's really kind of the foundation of what we're working on. And I've had the pleasure of doing this work now with the Chamber for almost 7 years. I'm a constant constantly in the literature, working with best practices. I was in East Tennessee trying to steal some of their ideas last week because no one has all of the right solutions. The program that we've started in collaboration with our economic development team at the Rutherford County Chamber has really focused on K-12 as that long-term talent pipeline. We are starting to do some work with adult populations, but the core is really getting kids beginning in elementary school and going all the way K to J to understand the opportunities that are in front of them. So with that, Rutherford Works, of course, is the economic and workforce development arm of the Chamber. Our vision is really to bring industry and education together in what we call uncommon partnerships, because in most communities, education and industry do not talk to each other. They have very different languages, and having the ability to translate between those has been difficult. We focus on serving 5 key industry sectors that we call our high 5, high wage, high demand, high growth. And those include construction, healthcare, information, technology, manufacturing, and supply chain management. And we chose those based on a study that was done with the Department of Labor and Harvard and the Jobs for the Future nonprofit out of Boston. And this was data from based on 2013 national data that was available, NAICS data, or MZ data. And you'll see that the top industry sectors for growth from a salary and a number of jobs were manufacturing, healthcare, transportation and warehousing, or what we call supply chain management, construction, and professional, scientific, and technical services and information technology. Those kind of all go together, but we've got them broken out for reporting purposes here. And the projected change of growth, you'll see manufacturing was projected to grow at 21, healthcare at 28, transportation and warehousing at 15. Last year, I looked at what our actuals were. So this was based on projections from 2013, actuals from 2013, projections from 2014 to 2024. Manufacturing grew at a little less than what was expected. Healthcare a little less. Supply chain management was at 15, and it's now at 84%. And just to piggyback on the previous conversation, we're not talking pickers and packers. We're talking high-level skills where companies are going to UTK and to Memphis to pull out of those supply chain management programs. MTSU is in the process of developing a bachelor's degree in supply chain management. They have a concentration in their master's program, but the demand is there for those kinds of jobs. Construction also has outpaced the expectation from 2013, and certainly IT, the professional and technical services, has as well. And you'll notice that while we all want to consider manufacturing a blue-collar industry, it has by far the highest average annual salary. So we have great job growth in our community, and this is that speaks to the why, and this speaks to the why as well. And I know everyone in the room is familiar with the Drive to 55 and Governor Haslam's launch to get 25 or 55% of our population with some type of post-secondary degree by 2025 to fill those job demands. And this is just some data that backs the why up. 1.4 million Tennesseans, 50% of workers are at risk of losing their jobs because of automation. Now, that doesn't mean that Nissan's going to go turn their plant into robot-run facility, because the expense to do that is significant. But they do have a large number of robots within the plant, and somebody has to be able to program those, and somebody has to be able to maintain those. Tennessee, the most concerning fact for me is that Tennessee must produce more than 870,000 additional credentials by 2025 to meet the workforce demand, and we're not close. In Rutherford County, when this initiative started, Rutherford County had 39,000 individuals who had some college but no degree. And thus the governor started the Reconnect grant to partner with the Tennessee Promise. So the Tennessee Promise provides free tuition to high school graduates. The Reconnect grant provides free tuition for those 25 and older who do not already have a degree. We are not much closer to that today. We are making progress, but we're not making enough progress. And what I'll tell you is that while those degrees are important, companies like Schneider Electric no longer require a bachelor's degree for IT jobs. They're looking with individuals that have experience, that have certifications, and that's where I think as a state we're going to have to move to, is looking more at those short-term industry certifications and credentials that can get people into good-paying jobs that give them an opportunity to continue to move up within the organization. This stat to me is a little terrifying, and this is why we do need all of our students doing something post-high school. So this is information from the Department of Education based on students that came in 2009 as high school freshmen. 9,000 students did not graduate from high school in the state of Tennessee. 20,000 students graduated from high school and went right to work, and their average earning salary is $10,000 a year, which that means that's several part-time jobs cobbled together, and no one can live on $10,000 a year in Rutherford County. The poverty line, the last I looked, was somewhere between $19,000 and $20,000 for a single individual. So this is why we need individuals earning some type of credential post-high school. And then here's some other challenging data for us. So in terms of students completing. So in Rutherford County, 65% of our students go on to some type of post-secondary training. That could be military, that could be TCAT, Motlow, MTSU, or other state public-private institutions. The challenge is that only about 30% of students entering a community college will graduate in 3 years, and only about 50 to 60% will graduate at a 4-year in 6 years. So we're sending them to college, and Tennessee Promise has certainly done a great job of getting more students in. The data is also showing us that students that have a mentor or a part of the Tennessee Promise program going to community college complete at higher rates than those who just walk in without any assistance. So Tennessee Promise is making a difference, but we've got to do more to help kids understand why they're going to college and why that's important to them. The $10,000 a year salary should be one, but they don't understand the implications of that. And they don't understand when they go to college why they're going to college. And that is one of the biggest reasons we're seeing the dropout rates and the non-completion rates.
Do you think another reason could be that we are not offering enough vocational schools? Because, graduate from high school, maybe I want to be a beautician, just for an example. I don't particularly want to go to a 4-year college and run up debt financially. Why can't I just go to a cosmetology school? Or
Right.
if I want to be a mortician, can I just go to a mortuary science school and not waste all my money and time in a 4-year school? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You think that could be part of the problem?
Well, I think it is, but I think it also goes back to, and it gets to the core of why we're doing what we're doing. We are not doing a sufficient job of educating students and parents, beginning even in elementary school, about what options they have available to them. So let's take your cosmetology example, and TCAT Murfreesboro has a cosmetology program. What percentage of high school graduates leave any of our high schools, Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, and go to TCAT or Smyrna or Murfreesboro? What percentage of high school graduates? 7%. So only 7% of kids that graduate from our schools are going to the TCAT. So we're not talking to them about the TCAT in high school, in middle school. We're not talking to them about all the options. Education, and this is not Rutherford County or Murfreesboro City, this is education in general, is still under the perception that everybody needs a 4-year degree. What we talk about from the Rutherford County Chamber, Rutherford Works, with our councils, with our students, with our teachers, everybody needs a career plan. How you get to that career plan, that career goal, is going to look very different. For cosmetology, I could start in high school and get half of my hours completed at the cosmetology program at Oakland High School, and then transfer to TCAT and be finished in a year, debt-free. I don't have to go to Paul Mitchell or one of these other private schools that's going to cost a fortune. But we are still under the perception that everybody needs a 4-year degree. When we know that they're not going to college, not everybody's going to college, and we also know that they're not completing. So the idea of career advising earlier, as early as possible, is really what we've based our Rutherford Works plan on. So to facilitate our work and to work hand in hand with industry partners to create these uncommon partnerships, over the last 6 years, we have built out these industry-led councils. So about 8 times a year, just the way that the calendar works out with school schedules. Construction, healthcare, IT, supply chain, and manufacturing leaders come to the chamber. We sit down with our K-12 partners. Murfreesboro City Schools are at the table, and our higher ed partners, and we talk about ways to help students understand earlier what options are available to them, both from industry and education. And then we talk to employers about how they can go in and work with our schools, as well as how we can get folks into jobs in those industries more quickly. These are just three of our most recent strategic priorities. We're getting ready to work on updating these, but increasing awareness of career and college options. One of the newest things we've done under that is we've started a parent council that sits along with our industry council. So we're starting to talk to parents about how we talk to parents about what options are available for their students. Most parents don't even know that vocational options are available to their students in high school. So how do we get that information to them in a relevant time frame that makes sense for them to be able to make decisions? Removing barriers to access and completion, and that is a lot around how we get early post-secondary. So how do we get college options classes into high school so that students have a chance to try college before they leave high school? And the data shows that if a student takes an AP, a dual enrollment, or dual credit class in high school and is successful, they are more likely to be successful after high school completing a college or university path. And then increased work-based learning opportunities. How do we help students learn how to work? Because they don't know how to work. And unless industry teaches them, comes along side by side with them and gets 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds working, they're not going to learn how to work. And I'll just highlight quickly Ingram Content in Laverne for the last 2 years in early November has gone to Smyrna and Laverne high schools and Stewart's Creek High School and recruited students to come work for them during peak. They have 17 and 18-year-olds working for them from the middle of November through at least the early part of January. This past year, they recruited 40 students. They still have 24 working for them part-time. So these are students who are earning $14 an hour, which is much more than that $10,000 a year number we saw above. And there have been no safety issues, no performance issues. In fact, the HR manager said that her 17 and 18-year-olds are more mature than some of her 40-year-olds working for her. So this is a great example of where industry and education are partnering. Industry's filling the need for their jobs, and they're also teaching students how to work at the same time and giving them exposure into the supply chain management industry.
And I think we also need to look at how we can pay teachers more money, because teachers are financially burned out. Anytime you have to recruit a teacher on, let's say, the high school level to teach math, and on top of that give them, let's say, a $5,000 bonus just to come in, and we have so many dedicated teachers, but they so underpaid. So we have to find a way to, because our kids spend more time at school.
Absolutely.
Awake time, than they do at home. So I think we need to look at the big picture too, is paying these teachers more money, because we have excellent teachers, but we getting a lot of teacher burnout now. And that's I think has a tremendous impact on an elementary especially, and even high school students, when we can't get the best teachers in. Because
Absolutely.
anytime a teacher has to work 2 jobs,
Well, and for career and technical education, we're asking folks to come out of industry and probably make half to a third of what they could make. So if you trying to get someone out of the IT industry to come in and teach more cybersecurity, data analytics classes in our high schools, you're asking somebody that's making $120,000 easily to come in and make $45,000.
Right.
So there are definitely challenges that the state is going to have to look at in terms of addressing that. Just in general, what we do with the councils, these are some of the activities. One of the best things we've done in the last couple of years is invite our K-12 teachers and principals into our meetings. Murfreesboro City Schools assigned a principal to come to each of our council meetings. So for 2 years now, they have been listening and hearing, and one of the cool things we've started at Discovery School this year is a mentorship program between each of our industry sector councils and the 5th and 6th grade classes. So they're currently working on a problem-based solution to an industry problem for IT, healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, and STEM-related career fields. These are just examples of specifically around tech. So we're looking at how we get adult learner track going more quickly, how we raise awareness about IT jobs. I've got a couple of slides in here related to this that I'll come back to that talks about the awareness piece, which speaks to all of this, I think. One of the things we did this year was to create a sustainable technology solution opportunity. So Charlie Apigian, who now leads our Data Science Institute at MTSU, has done a lot of work around working with kids and technology. And we know from data from Rutherford County Schools, looking at an aptitude inventory called U-Science, that we have 27% of our middle schoolers in Rutherford County have high aptitude for careers in IT. How many of them have interest in careers in IT?
5%?
8%. So they're always attached to some kind of a technology gizmo, a game, a phone, a tablet, but they're not interested in what makes that happen. I want to be a gamer. I want to be an influencer or a YouTuber. Okay, but you've got to understand the technology that goes into that. So we've got to figure out how to make it fun. And then fun equals exposure, which equals interest. So that's one of the reasons we tried this competition this year, to try to get more kids in Rutherford County and Murfreesboro City schools engaged in exposure to technology, which can then lead to interest.
And when we roll out with these great programs, because that's a great program that you just talked about at the Discovery School, and I think it would have a tremendous impact on education. In the future, I'd like to see when we roll out with these projections or these new programs, I would like to see us not only have it in the high achieving school like Discovery, I'd like just for a test to put that same program in the lowest underachieving school in Murfreesboro, that same program, just to see, the difference. Because in these schools where you have the underachievers, a lot of times it's the resources that they are not privy to. So I'd like, just for comparison, just see how the underachieving school, and when I say underachieving, you're looking at 90-something% free lunch program, parent situations, that school, and also put it in Discovery School. And I'd like just to see the difference in that. If sometimes in the future, if you all look that way, I would love to see the statistics when that program is complete, how that looks.
Absolutely. So I like to pilot things, get the kinks worked out before we roll out en masse. So hopefully, if all goes well with this, we would open up to Murfreesboro City School, any Rutherford County school, because we have enough industry partners that would be willing to go in and work with these schools to make that happen. So absolutely, we don't want to leave anyone out. That's for sure.
Hey Beth, from a curriculum standpoint in the middle schools and high schools, does the state control that?
Yes.
Completely?
Completely. Now, what we say from my friends at Rutherford County Schools like to say, we have to do what the standards say as a minimum requirement, but that doesn't mean that we can't go above and beyond. So we are definitely doing that.
Can we require kids to take technology classes in addition to English and math?
Not unless it's written into code, state code. In Rutherford County, all middle schools have a STEM program, but because of scheduling, if you're in band, you don't ever get to take a STEM class. So it's an elective. So students are chosen, they make a choice about an elective, or they're selected for an elective. So that's just because of the way the day falls and the scheduling that's available to them. I can't talk about STEM and not give enough credit to Dr. Gilbert and her team for what's going on in Murfreesboro City Schools. Overall Creek is like my happy place. I had the privilege of being there Friday a week ago with some folks from Nashville and legislators and Bill, and that is the model in Tennessee for how education should be taught, how classes should be taught, in terms of engaging students of all socioeconomic backgrounds, of all learning abilities. It's hands-on. Kids understand why they're doing math. They understand why they're learning to read and do science and social studies. And every industry that we're talking about here today, every industry that is presented from an economic development standpoint, is all STEM-based. So it is critical that they get this awareness in elementary school, and that's what we talk about in terms of exposure in elementary school, so that they can get interested and then move into actually exploration as they go on through school. So we focus on, from a programming standpoint, what we facilitate at the Chamber outside of our councils, exposure to STEM and soft skills in elementary school, middle school, providing them with those career exploration opportunities, hands-on engagement, and then in high school, making sure that they graduate with industry certifications, early post-secondary opportunities, so that it sets them up for success when they graduate from high school. These are just some of the programs that we have created and are facilitating each year. Amazing Shake, we had one Murfreesboro City School. Again, that's teaching interpersonal skills, teaching kids to shake hands, look you in the eye, soft skills being one of the most important skill sets that employers tell us are lacking in our young adults today. So that's why we have started that. That was our competition. Those were our students last year. The impact is greater than having a couple of students participate per school in a county competition, because the schools that have embraced this philosophy, all of the kids every day are learning to shake hands, look you in the eye, and communicate. So the impact is greater than just the few students that we have participate in the county competition. Our senior hiring event, this is another example of where we're trying to connect students that are about to graduate with jobs in our community. April 7th is our next scheduled event. This year we're actually including juniors and seniors, and we'll have over 66 employers there who are anxious to hire. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is our teacher externship. So we have launched a program that allows middle school teachers and administrators, librarians, counselors, whoever a school wants to send, to spend 2 weeks in industry. The first year we had 3 companies. Last year we had 5. This year we have 11 companies that will host Rutherford County middle school teachers or 6th grade teachers from Murfreesboro City Schools. So we had 2 Murfreesboro City teams apply for this program this year, and they spend 2 weeks with one of these industry partners. 3 of those days are with us, where we teach them about career advising and everything they need to know about what happens in high school, so that these middle school teachers can begin to work with those middle school students to identify, Madeline, really, you have great skill sets for healthcare. Have you ever thought about studying healthcare, health science pathway when you get to high school? And you're at Siegel Middle School. Siegel High School has one of the best health science programs in the county. You can earn a CNA before you graduate high school. You can get dual enrollment with MTSU and get set up for a nursing program at MTSU before you graduate high school. We want middle school teachers to be thinking that way. We pay them $20 an hour, and they spend 7 days of that 2-week time period with those industry partners. And it is overwhelming what they learn, because teachers, for the most part, went from school to school to school. And they've never worked in industry, so they don't know how to advise students. They don't know what jobs in manufacturing look like, that they're not dirty jobs. They don't know what jobs in IT really are. Excuse me. So it really opens their eyes and gives them the ability to be able to communicate them with their students. These are just some of the numbers in terms of the impact that we're making. I'm not here to say we've got it all figured out, but we are starting to make a difference in changing thought processes within our schools, as well as reaching out to our parents. And then we've had visits from as far away as Hawaii to come and look at our work. I keep wanting to do a reciprocal visit to Hawaii to look at what they're doing, so maybe I can get some of their best practices, but that just hasn't worked out yet. I could talk for days, but I won't keep you unless you have any other questions. Paul's gonna, I can go to Hawaii? Awesome. You're gonna send me to Hawaii? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you all very much.
Beth,
Yes.
Before you're done, what are we doing to, and I'll just go off my real world example of my son. He went to school here. He went through the discovery schools. He went through the what I would call the higher achieving classes. He went to college, he gets a degree. He leaves with a degree that says he is the engineering student of the year at the University of Middle Tennessee State University. He leaves there, and for over a year he knocks on doors, and everybody says, we're not hiring anybody who doesn't have experience. Therein lies the challenge. It's not always just necessarily education, but it's the educational opportunity. And if you don't get the opportunity to be an engineer, how do you become? Yeah, I mean,
That's why work-based learning is so important. And I will say, not just MTSU, but universities in general are not great at requiring students to have co-ops and internships in college. But they are, as parents, we have to make our kids do them, because that is a real scenario that companies do not want to hire people without experience.
And just for your information, I mean, he had 3 opportunities for internship. Every one of them said, yes, we want you to be an intern next semester. It would roll around and they'd go, well, we've got a change in management and we've got a change and we're moving our employees around, and right now it's not a good time for us to bring people in, so we're not going to do it this semester. Every single time, these people committed to helping these students, yet when it came time to actually prepare them, and of course, what they missed out on was a great opportunity to bring in employees, future employees, to help improve their workforce. But somewhere in there, we're just absolutely missing the target. And I use my son as the example, which probably wasn't fair to him, but he's got 5 buddies that are in the same exact boat as he did that graduated a couple years ago now, that he's been fortunate enough to find a job. They still haven't found a job, and they're still saying, well, how'd you get your job? And truthfully, there's somewhere in there that we're not.
That's Bible.
You know, and part of it is you know, coronavirus is probably a good example of causing an economic reset now that will force people to continue to work for more years because their retirement plan is suddenly changing now of what they were planning on retiring on. We did this 12 years ago or so, where we're forcing people to stay in the workforce longer, and somehow we're continuing to say we're improving the student by keeping them in school longer, but what you're actually doing is you're reducing the number of people within the workforce, and I think there's a denial in here somewhere of we're not creating enough jobs for these people to have the opportunity to work, because the people on the older side aren't falling off, and the people on the younger side are not getting an opportunity, even if they do get the training that we tell them they have to do.
Well, I will just say, to kind of wrap that up, that we do have a labor shortage. Yes, folks are having to work longer, and there are folks that are figuring out, companies that are figuring out how to bring retired folks back in because of knowledge base that they need. But Tennessee has one of the lowest labor participation rates of any state in the union. That means we have people in our communities who could be working but aren't. So we do have labor gaps. Part of that is skill-driven. Part of it is a disconnect between what I'm qualified to do and experience that I have. But we do not have, bottom line, we do not have enough people with the right training to fill every job that we have available today.
And some of those jobs may be more service-related jobs, because, I mean, when I talked to Crockett's when they were closing up their business here, I said, why are you closing up your business? They said, we can't get people to work. When Old Charlie's was closing up, same question. Why are you closing up your Old Charlie's here and other Old Charlie's are staying open? And they said, we just can't get employees. I think there's something going on amongst our youth now that believes that if I vote for Bernie, everything's going to be given to me. And I don't mean that as a political statement. But I guess it is. But this belief that everything is going to come free and everything's going to be given to you. I mean, it's a great lie, but the problem is we've got youth who are believing it, and therein lies my concern, the future of not just Murfreesboro, but this entire country, to believe that somehow you aren't going to have to work for what you get.
Well, they need to work when they're 16, and that's why we're focused on work-based learning opportunities.
Thank you for all you do, Beth.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move into, thank you so much, Beth. We're going to move into congestion mitigation projects from our engineer / comedian of the city of Murfreesboro, who's always on time.
Thank you, Mayor. I bet you the chief will never be late again either. Last month, during my presentation of current road projects, the discussion was had about priority projects for the city, and asked you at that time to give staff an attempt to come up with what we would think would be priority projects, and this is what we've developed. It's by no means the final. This is just a draft list. We certainly want council's input on this. We would like to get a review group to look at these projects and compare it to maybe where they see issues as well. Last month, and anytime I do a presentation on current projects, I always get the question, well, why isn't such and such project on the list? If you'll notice, in this presentation in particular, Thompson Lane is not on this list. There's not a more important project to the city of Murfreesboro than the widening of Thompson Lane to try to get that congestion under control. It's not on the list basically because it's so far in development that there's really not much that we can do to move it along any more quickly. It's in the process getting ready to start buying right of way, and then they'll move on, or it's scheduled to move on to construction shortly after that. So these projects are ones that we've either haven't started yet or still very early on in their development, with the exception of Cherry Lane, and I'll just honestly, we're always looking for ways to get additional funding for Cherry Lane to help offset some of the cost. With that said, these are broken up to basically to three types of projects. There'll be a local roads, which most of that's funded primarily from the CIP program. They'll also have state and federal projects. You'll see most of that are state routes that we'll hope to get some shared funding on that with the state picking up the predominance of the cost. And then more localized intersection projects. Where do we have some congestion at the intersections? Thanks to the council with the hotspot program we've done over the last couple of years, we've helped a lot of those situations, but there's still some projects that we can work on. I'll try to go through these quickly. Caroline Farms, this is a local road project. This next group is all local roads. This is basically a connection between Thompson Lane to the Cherry Lane extension, just looking to relieve congestion on both Memorial and Thompson, giving folks an alternate route to get back to I-840. Again, as with the last, at any time, if you want to stop me and ask me any specific questions about this, I'll be happy to answer any question. Thanks also to staff for helping me put all this together. This was truly a team effort. Cherry Lane Phase 2. This is the local portion of the project, basically from the Siegel Soccer Park to where Sulphur Springs and Alford Road comes together. This is currently and probably will always be just locally funded, just the way that we've done the design and the work on this project. Front and Vine Street realignment there at Broad Street. Could have put this as an intersection project, but it's we do think this is a really just to encourage that use of Front and Vine Street. We would like to get folks back to Old Salem Highway if we can. Old Salem Highway is a project that shows up in our 2040 major thoroughfare plan as another good access to the downtown area from really, we hope all the way out from Warrior Drive out in the Riverdale area. The Gateway Boulevard extension, This will looking to get a direct connection, a more direct connection from Medical Center Parkway over to Robert Rose, and help alleviate some of the traffic on Thompson Lane, specifically the Medical Center Parkway and the Medical Center Parkway intersection with Thompson Lane, and Robert Rose intersection with Thompson Lane as well.
Chris, can you back up real quickly to
Yes.
Cherry Lane?
Cherry Lane, yes. Yeah, the graphics are awful on this, so I apologize. We're not going through the park. It's actually goes just north of the new practice fields that we probably just copied our old graphics from our GIS.
Just not wanting us to spend money on soccer fields if we're fixing.
No, absolutely. That's a good catch, but no, absolutely not.
I tried to tell him.
Yeah. It's a big project for us. The River Rock connection over to State Route 99. If there was ever really a project that's designed to just to relieve congestion that's just caused by residential developments, this one. Basically keeping people away from both the New Salem 24 interchange and the Old Fort Parkway 24 interchange, and giving them a more direct route to State Route 99. Of course, it includes a bridge over both the Stones River and over I-24 as well. That connection, that's basically the bus maintenance facility is where we punch through at there for the city schools. But a big project for us to help congestion at those interchanges. The Rutherford Boulevard extension, this basically will take Rutherford Boulevard, will extend all the way from Church Street all the way over to Warrior Drive. Again, as was shown in the 2040 Major Thoroughfare Plan, connections over the interstate, which is one of our major obstacles, is the goal here. The Rutledge Boulevard extension, it really dovetails with the Rutherford Boulevard. This is just really extending Rutledge all the way from Middle Tennessee Boulevard to Rutherford, and give those folks another route over the interstate. These are our state and federal shared projects. Our goal on this was to look at maybe a 20% local match, and then use 80% state and federal dollars. I'll tell you, we haven't talked with TDOT at all about this. I think the mayor mentioned last time the possibility of getting in front of them. These are the types of projects that we would want to take to them, and our participation in them. And I'll warn you, on the front end, these are some pretty big projects, pretty ambitious, but we think a lot of them, it's time for them to happen. Broad Street widening from 840 all the way back to Medical Center Parkway. So basically, what you see between Medical Center Parkway back to Memorial, it would look like that. It would be a 7-lane section, taking out that center median and adding additional through lanes. Broad Street and Thompson Lane grade separation. Basically just moving the bridge over Broad down to Thompson Lane. We think this is actually could possibly be even a better location for that same design, just based on the current configurations of the road. Cherry Lane Phase 3, you guys have heard a lot about it. This is basically the section that we do have federal and all right, no state money, just federal money in, but this will go from Sulphur Springs back to including the interchange at 840 and then back to Broad. The Memorial Boulevard widening, this is from north of Thompson Lane. Our immediate goal was to get something up to Cherry Lane, but in the 2040 Major Thoroughfare Plan takes it all the way up to Jefferson Pike, so we included it with this with this grouping. Basically includes increased capacity on Memorial, which has three major arterials intersecting with it at this location. New Las Casas, State Route 96, widening basically from Clark Boulevard out to DeJarnett for 5 lanes. Old Fort Parkway widening. We've got 4 lanes with some turn lanes in there. We would like to bump that up to 6 from New Salem back to the interstate. Okay, these are intersection improvement projects, a little bit smaller in nature, but still important to help our overall capacity. Broad Street and Medical Center Parkway. We've got right turn lanes there now. We don't really think we're getting full use or full use of our pavement at those locations. We would like to turn those into to double lefts in order to help that movement. Double lefts on Broad Street, turning on to Medical Center Parkway. The Memorial Boulevard signalization upgrade, really to upgrade our controllers and softwares to provide enhanced tools for to improve the signal performance measures on Memorial Boulevard. Just really trying to get the signals to that we do have there. Not really a whole lot of opportunity to widen Memorial Boulevard through this section, so we just want it to optimize the signalization. Mercury, Broad Street, Bradeville Pike. Anybody that's lived in Murfreesboro for any amount of time knows that got some lane drops here that really make that whole navigating that whole stretch of roadway kind of cumbersome. We would like to widen those out. And also would go with our Bradeville Pike project that's currently in right-of-way acquisition. Old Fort, Thompson Lane, and Chafin Place. The state has approached us about the right turn lane there on Old Fort Parkway. We would like to add Chafin Place there in front of the service station to some additional laneage there as well. South Rutherford and Manchester Pike, just as that area continues to develop, we've already feel like we've got a congestion problem there, and we would like to add some turn lanes. Wanting to do this with the developer, but we'd like to be able to move forward with it in the meantime, at least on the design for it. And I believe this is the last project, Warrior Drive and New Salem Highway. This was included on our current project list. We really think Warrior Drive, with the connection back to River Rock and some of the development that's going on there, is going to have quite a bit of increase in traffic, and we would like to continue to move forward with widening it. The last couple of slides are just some overall numbers on the cost and how that's divided up between other funding and local funds. Last slide's just our kind of our pie chart there. About $190 million in local funds we currently have proposed for these projects, with about $150 million coming from other funds. As you can see, about $2.4 million. Haven't really got too far along on really anything other than Cherry Lane with these. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All those projects on the major thoroughfare plan, like the 2040 transportation plan or whatever it's called?
Yes, they're all, well, the intersection projects probably wouldn't be, just because they're more localized stuff, but all the other major projects are. They all, I think all except for maybe one are listed as a short-term improvement on that, which would be basically in that 0 to 8 or 9 year phase.
Higher bang for your buck or high.
Yes,
higher,
exactly.
yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Griffith.
Thank
We'll now
you.
move into talking about grass collection. Mr. Gore.
Someday, maybe.
Colorado would be okay.
First off, I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't say we've got 8 knuckle booms right now in Mount Juliet, helping with cleanup activities after the tornado. So Wednesday's normally the solid waste day off, and some volunteers, they've taken all 8 knuckle booms up there to go help them. I've actually got some, before I get into the grass clippings, if I can, oh, there's a picture of some of the, I got another one here. They posted these on Facebook too, but so we're up there working today, solid waste guys, couple of streets guys too with Raymond, but mainly solid waste. So I appreciate them doing that. Let me get back to.
Already that they thought was going to take 2 or 3 days. They come in there in just days. So they started at 5 o'clock. They'll get off at 7 o'clock tonight. So they're working their schedule. So they're just highly impressed with what these guys do.
Yeah, you said that the mayor, they did an emergency purchase for 2 knuckle booms since they didn't have any. They weren't.
Impressed with how the knuckle boom operates. So they made emergency purchases.
Right. So this is included in your handout. I just wanted to kind of go through, and we're not asking for any recommendations today, or we're not making any recommendation or asking for any action. We just wanted to follow up with what other communities are doing. We've kind of canvassed a lot of different cities and asked about grass clippings specifically. So these are outside Tennessee communities. So I've just kind of, they do it all except for the last one, Asheville, North Carolina does not accept grass clippings at all, but none of them accept it in a loose format. And we went through the method of acceptance and kind of their collection interval. Most of these larger cities do pick up grass clippings weekly as they pick up solid waste. They may pick solid waste up one day, and then the next day they just follow up and pick up the grass clippings or the yard waste. And you can see a lot of them use the reusable container, so they're actually putting them in a 96-gallon, a similar size, a similar container, just maybe a different color. And inside Tennessee, we did talk to a lot of those, so everybody in Tennessee does accept grass, and we did find that Sevierville and Knoxville do accept loose grass clippings. Everyone else does not. They require them in biodegradable bags. The Knoxville had a little caveat to say, well, they only do it if you put it in a tight pile or if you put the grass clippings in with other, brush and limbs and stuff, so that it kind of, I guess, that helps keep the grass clippings bundled together and easier to pick up. So,
Aaron, is there any scenario or any of those examples where they provide the bags?
No, not that I'm aware of. No one said that they provided the bags. Of course, Raymond just got his promotion. Congratulations to Raymond, and he's in on this. And then, so I want his mind working and his experience to come to the table. So that's kind of one of the. I wanted to give you all this information first, but also I think Raymond and Joey and I want to sit down and really try to brainstorm where we've given a convenience to our community and we want to continue that convenience, but there may be a way. One of the ideas, and I told Raymond I'd bring this up today, is maybe we let people continue to put loose grass clippings out, but we charge them for loose grass. If you put it in a bag, you don't get charged. If you leave grass clippings out on the street corner, maybe we can identify that and add a little surcharge to your monthly bill now that we are billing for solid waste. That's just food for thought kind of thing, maybe a compromise.
Now, I think one of the challenges that I've experienced and witnessed is some of the situations that we're putting in bags when we come by with the sucker truck, for lack of a better term.
Right.
We're dumping it out of the bags and sucking it up with the sucker truck. Well, that kind of, in the person of the mind who bagged it wonders, why didn't I just put it out there? And we know why, because we don't want it to get into the drainage system and everything else.
Right.
I mean, are bags that expensive? Would we be better off to go ahead and attempt to provide some bags? Because everybody I talk to doesn't seem to have a problem with bagging it. It's the fact that where do I get bags? And somehow we haven't educated the public very well on where they get the bags to do it with and what type of bags they should be using. We definitely don't want them to use plastic trash bags. So
I actually did think about a campaign where if we do something with our ordinance changes, that we would have a bag and we would print out the information on the bag and we would give everybody the bag and say, this is the bag, and maybe that's where you can go get them. And hey, starting this month or starting in the next few months, if you put grass clippings out loose, you'll be charged, or I mean, you're right. I still think a lot of it is the commercial folks that are putting it out there by the curbside and not the actual residents, which they shouldn't be at all. There's that level of communication, then there's the communication to the public. And I know this is how detailed it gets, y'all. We if that grass is in a reusable container like our garbage, our 96-gallon containers, our side loaders go 45 degrees. We don't do the full invert, right? So that grass stays in there 3 or 4 days. We all know what happens when that grass sits around for a while. It gets wet, it gets sticky, and guess what? 45 degrees is not coming out, and we don't have a way to, flip. I mean, and then the sucker thing is really for leaves, and if it gets wet, it can't pick up the grass. And then we've talked about, hey, they've got some super suckers that'll pick up wet grass. Well, that means, do we want to go buy a fleet of really high-end vacuum fleet to pull up just grass clippings themselves? I think the main thing I'm trying to communicate here is that loose grass clippings, it's difficult to pick up with the grappling hook. It's difficult. I mean, any way that we deal with loose grass clippings, it takes more time and effort to pick them up. So it's similar to what we did with our commercial solid waste folks. Twice a week pickup. People had 10, 15 garbage carts, very inefficient. We started charging them pretty substantially, and we've had almost 1,000 commercial garbage carts turned in because it was more effective for them to go use a private entity. I think if you start charging people for loose grass pickup, they'll probably figure out how to bag it, quite honestly. Or if they don't. Or if they just say, don't care, there's enough grass, I generate enough grass, I'll pay the $5, $10, whatever fee you say. They may just say, hey, I'll pay the surcharge just so I don't have to bag it. That's just an option that I've been thinking about. Again, we will come to you at some point with a recommendation and with the other solid waste ordinance revisions. Not prepared to do that today. I just wanted to let you know we are still looking at it. We are still canvassing other communities. We're still trying to assess what's the best way to do this. And Raymond, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he's going to help us get this across the finish line. I did want to end on this note. We do have Rollins Excavating, or I guess they're I can't think of the new name of their the new name. RecPro. They've created a new RecPro. I got this picture from them on the weekend. So this is what this is one residence that went through and trimmed up all the trees in their yard, and that's going to take at least, I'd say, 2 loads, maybe more than 2 loads of a knuckle boom.
We don't pick that up.
Yes,
right?
we do.
That's above our limit, though, right?
No.
See,
That's where well.
We had like a 4x8.
No, that's what the proposed solid waste ordinance is saying is if you, and what'll happen if you do this, we've got a certain amount that we do for free, like a 8x8x8.
Yeah.
If you require more than that, then we would charge you. If you take a full load.
We already have something in our current ordinance that
No.
has a limit.
No, sir. The only thing that limits this is if you have it over, if it's over 8-inch diameter or if it's over 10-foot length. Jerry actually went to this individual and knocked on the door because we thought it had been done by,
Yeah, like you really did.
well, no, he said, and this, the guy said, no, I had a buddy, he came over, we did it ourselves. So, there was nothing that this particular person did wrong and nothing in the ordinance that we could charge this person for it. They had to pick this up and take it over to the Florence Road Station.
I mean, just a quick question. So say that takes 2 loads.
Right.
All right, what is our hourly rate, driving and everything, for 2 loads?
I don't know that offhand, but that's where we're trying to create a fee where we could take
in my world, I pay $635 per dumpster. Is what on the private sector we have to pay for if we did something like that.
Right.
So if you just said that doesn't include a lot of, but just say that would be $1,400 if you had to pay Waste Management to get a 20-yard dumpster. That wouldn't include putting it in the dumpster. That's just the dumpster.
The dumpster itself,
so
right.
if you figure that realistically is $1,700 by the time you figure labor and, I mean, that's probably what that individual pays in property taxes
Yeah,
all year long.
Right.
And that's out the door on
Right.
one pickup.
Right. I totally understand. This is why I'm trying to show you these pictures intermittently.
I think that's good for the public to understand that. I mean, in the private sector, if you're going to order a dumpster to be brought to your house, it's $635. And then if that dumpster sits there longer than 4 weeks, it's a $650 inactivity fee. So you're paying $600 every time that you turn that thing over.
Wow.
Not really related. You have a whole lot of stuff getting to the landfill that looks like that, or is it going to Florence from Cookville and East Nashville and all that?
Well, somebody asked me that the other day about all the debris that's being picked up right now because of the tornado. Is that what you're asking about? Yeah, a lot of that's going to. Yeah, a lot of it. Well, there's.
Landfill. You know?
Oh no, we don't let it go to. I mean, we would not accept other community debris or yard waste at Florence. It would have to go to the landfill or to some other composting mulching site. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what somebody brought up. Is this recent storm is that going to shorten the life of the landfill? And to be honest, it may very well.
Well, it's our understanding that Davidson County did not. As of this time, Davidson County had not renewed their contract with Middle Point. So if Davidson County does not renew their contract with Middle Point, then all of a sudden the life of the landfill is a lot longer than Nashville's trash. It's not coming to Murfreesboro.
See, I'd heard something along that line where Middle Point was not bidding on other communities accepting it because they had an obligation to Metro Nashville.
The other day with another supplier, we were told. Now, I didn't verify that, but that's what the contract had not been signed.
Gotcha. So again, this is just more information to cogitate or chew on, and then we'll be back again here some other day to talk to you about it and give you some more and revisit the solid waste ordinance revisions. Okay, that's it for me.
Sure, buddy. Hey, so, not going on this. Is that something that there's the expectation of, you know, in the attorney world of what a reasonable person would do? You're impressed, aren't you, Adam?
Yeah, I know you attended law school.
Yeah, that 1 year law school helped me out. Is that something that we would want to push out on our social media that, hey, you know, not to do?
That's why I want to create a schedule of fees so that if somebody decides to do that, we at least recapture the cost to the city in handling that. So what I would maybe, I don't know if prefer is the right word, what I would maybe recommend is when we come back and everybody is comfortable with our solid waste ordinance revisions, before we enact those and before we start enforcing those, that we do a social media blitz and maybe again, like I said, put the chain. I mean, I'm not. We go by 40-something thousand biodegradable bags and put the changes on there and leave it on the doorstep of every home so they know, hey, these things are coming.
I'm just thinking that
If they're coming.
like if I'm the next door neighbor of that guy and I knew that my taxes were paying for that, I would be.
I think Rec Pro expected me to do something about it, and I called Joey. I said, Joey, in the past, have we done anything about it? And he's like, it's 10 foot long, less than 8 inches. Nope, we pick it up unless we know that. And then again, trying to prove, unless you took a picture of a commercial tree trimming service out there doing it, if the resident tells you that he and a buddy did it, you, oh, okay,
What do
and
you
we
do with
pick
the
it.
limbs that were greater than 8 inches in diameter? There weren't any there, and they're missing off the tree. Where did they go?
I couldn't tell you. I have no idea.
Is there a drain though? Is there a stuff in the drain? Is this all? Do all of the changes need to be made simultaneously, or are there? I mean, as far as you're concerned, I'm just trying to figure out. I mean, if there are some things that are kind of layups, if they're just individual amendments to whatever our ordinance is, or if there's one big ordinance that we're trying to do here.
Right.
But if they're individual amendments, I mean, there's some of those things that I remember from last time, the mattress pickup and that right there, that kind of stuff right there, to me is pretty layup
stuff, sure.
We could knock out and start that clock ticking on when we enforce. Now, if you're saying you'd rather do it all at once, then that's okay. I really don't have a preference on that.
I think we can give you a menu style deal and maybe from a priority standpoint or a layup standpoint, maybe we could put them in some type of prioritization of order. Grass clippings is a big deal just because it does take so much time and effort. And so again, that's where I'm trying to maybe compromise. If we want to continue to do it, maybe it just becomes something in the schedule of fees that we charge for. That's the only one that I'm trying to. It seemed like everything else it was consensus on what we were trying to do. The grass clippings was the only thing I heard that was a little bit, from a couple of folks that had an issue.
That's why I made a point to say, that sounds like something I could probably be, move on forward with,
Okay.
So.
Very good. We'll be back. Thank you.
All right. Move to budget and financial update.
You have the dashboard provided in the agenda package, so if you have any questions, we're happy to answer that. Otherwise,
any questions on the financials for January? All right, seeing none, you have one beer permit in front of you.
Yes, Mayor. This is an ownership change for a business already in place, but it'd be a new location for beer. And they have met our requirements for issuing a beer permit, and they do need to finish up their building codes inspections. So we would not issue, if you approve it, until that has taken place.
So moved. I'm going to ask one more question. I know you've already talked to me about this. I'm just going to bring it up for the point of bringing it up again. So, obviously, I'm not trying to pick on JoJo, but you look through here, you got 2 DUI offenses. You've got, in January of 20, evading arrest, motor vehicle, 3rd DUI pending. So if those are not crimes of moral turpitude for us to not issue someone a beer permit, then outside of murder or other things, when would there be a case where we'd ever say this is not appropriate? Murder.
Moral turpitude is not defined by state law. We have when I drafted the city's beer ordinance and the city's alcoholic beverage ordinance, I took case law from the state and Attorney General's opinion, taking what courts and the Attorney General had interpreted crimes of moral turpitude to be. And I took the broadest scope that existed in light of those precedents. And I drafted that as legally as broad as I thought I could under Tennessee state law. And I understand your concern. And I think there might be an argument to be made that crimes of moral turpitude could be expanded broader. And that would be a decision for the council if you wanted to expand it broader than what it's currently drafted. With the caveat is that I don't know if it were challenged whether or not a court would agree with how we expanded it. So where it's defined right now, I have a high degree of confidence that a court would say all of those things are crimes of moral turpitude. And I don't have that ordinance in front of me, but it includes felonies and misdemeanors that involve violence, theft of certain amount, certain types of drug possessions or offenses where it's sale, manufacture, distribution of controlled substances, fraud, kidnapping, sexual assault, domestic assault, but something like shoplifting, something like a DUI there's not a precedent under Tennessee state law at this time where a court has said, yes, that is a crime of moral turpitude.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe if this guy's working, he won't be out doing all those bad things.
Second.
They just have easy access to it.
Yeah,
Won't have to go out.
Yeah, motion.
He made the motion. Okay. We have a motion.
Yes, we have
Second.
a motion and a second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
No.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
No.
Mr. Shacklet. Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
No.
Is that
4 no's and 3 yes.
so it doesn't pass, right?
4 no's, 3 yeses, so it failed.
Okay.
Are we on other business?
All right, we'll move to other business.
Okay, one thing real quick. You recall that Mr. Greg McKnight was asked to be interim planning director for a few weeks ago. He has accepted that position on a permanent basis, so we'll appoint him and do the paperwork in the next couple of days to make him our new planning director.
Excellent. Congrats, Greg.
He's doing a great job.
All right, any other business for the council?
How far out are we looking before we get a impact study in?
April? I think it's for the April workshop, is that correct?
Yeah, we had to work some scheduling. Our study, the guy that did the study was in Canada, so we had to get him back from Canada. So assuming we're all still able to meet as a group, then we'll do it in April.
All right, we'll stand adjourned.